we saw a crash of one of the flying saucers. One of them was still alive.
This time, on Unexplained Mysteries, target Earth. UFOs might be preparing to attack our planet. Security was breached at 2 top-secret missile bases, possibly by alien spacecraft.
This was not an airplane. He had my authority to shoot.
In England, there's been a sudden increase in reports of strange triangular craft.
From the left, this enormous craft came over the houses.
I couldn't believe my eyes, because there was no sound at all from this object.
The military made contact with the craft, with devastating results.
United States Navy Tomcat aircraft was seen to disappear in close proximity to one of these gigantic triangular-shaped craft.
We'll explain the origin of the most famous term in ufology.
What Arnold's sighting did was to give these things a name, flying saucers.
The Pacific Northwest has seen a surge of sightings.
One of these discs looked like it was going to crash right near his boat.
And the military is powerless to stop an alien assault on Washington, D.C.
He flew into this cluster of light. And then he said, "I see them. They're all around me."
A cop sees something otherworldly.
I could see a white object.
But it seems the Air Force covered up the incident.
They have no documentation to place the lunar lander.
A war hero pursues an unidentified object.
No one's ever going to convince me I didn't see it, because there were too many of us that did.
And the pilot dies in a crash shrouded in mystery.
No one at the funeral home saw the body.
Memories of the famous Roswell incident from witnesses who lived through it.
I have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
I reached over and I got it. And I picked it up and played with it.
Why did the military force them to keep quiet?
The clamps came down.
And the emotional fallout that resulted from the government's threats.
Not being able to tell the truth, I think, hurt our family. I feel like a part of my life has been ripped off. I feel like a part of our security has been destroyed.
And we'll sum it all up for you in the UNX Report, here on Unexplained Mysteries. Target Earth. Alien spacecraft may have already made contact with Earth. Experts say one of the most dangerous incidents occurred at 2 U.S. missile bases. Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. Near the nuclear site, codenamed November, a base that was supposed to be impenetrable.
I got a call from one of my security guards upstairs. He said that he and other guards had seen UFOs flying over the area. I didn't think he was serious. Basically, we hung up.
The missiles were armed with nuclear warheads. It was nearly impossible to get past the heavy security. But someone, or something, did.
About 5 minutes later, he calls back and he said that there was a UFO hovering just outside the front gate. And he was very frightened. Within a minute or two of the second call, the missiles started shutting down or going off alert. We were basically shocked to see our missiles going no-go sequentially. The only thing I could think was, oh my God.
12 hours later, at another missile site called Echo, the same thing happened. Without warning, their missiles also shut down.
We just looked at each other and said, I don't understand this. How could this happen? There is no command in the capsule to turn them off. There was no switch, no off switch. They did not break.
Like Salas, Crawford also received a call from a terrified security guard.
And he could not identify what he was seeing. In other words, this was not an airplane. It was way too low and too close, and it also didn't go away. I guess I finally convinced him that if the whatever it was came inside the fence, he had my authority to shoot, which made him feel really good. But he said, "Sir, I don't really think that'll do much good."
3 hours later, the missiles came back online.
It just started back up normally like they had installed it from the factory.
The system designers couldn't figure out what had happened. Nobody could figure out what happened. It lends credibility to the fact that something very, very unusual happened.
The military blamed the shutdown on an electromagnetic pulse, a technology which was not man-made, and the Air Force disavowed the reports of their own personnel.
I know, for example, that I briefed my commander on the UFO incidents. I know for a fact that those statements in that historical document are false.
Incredibly, Salas and Crawford never knew about each other until Salas wrote an article about the incident. Crawford read it and knew that he too could finally share his experience. Salas and Crawford met for the very first time.
You've been doing for 30 years.
It's been a long time. I remember you now.
Salas showed Crawford his research.
You know, that's interesting that you get to get something from the Air Force that specifically says it happened.
Both men believe the Air Force is trying to cover up the two incidents.
I think when you know something, you tell it. You write it down. There's no reason not to put it public.
Certainly, if the UFO, whatever it is, has the capability of shutting down our missiles as they did, it's in the public interest to make this an open debate as to what it all means.
Sightings of unusual craft are taking place all over the world. In the skies over England, witnesses report giant triangular craft.
For sure, in all cases, people report that these things made no noise whatsoever. Some have been seen only a few hundred feet up.
From the left, this enormous craft came over the houses.
And I couldn't believe my eyes, because there was no sound at all from this object.
It banked over sharp to the left, and then I could see it was a huge triangle.
The British media have named these craft Silent Vulcans, after a British military plane known as the Avro Vulcan B-2.
The Vulcan was a pretty much triangular-shaped aircraft, but certainly it was no bigger than, let's say, for instance, 60 feet across, and nothing like the kind of size that we associate with today's flying triangles, as it were.
Some say the objects are U.S. stealth bombers, but the experts aren't buying it.
I just cannot believe that something as big as that could be described as a conventional super-secret stealth aircraft.
Manchester, a Silent Vulcan nearly collided with a passenger jet as it was landing.
Quite suddenly, what the crew described as a triangular, very brightly lit craft flew past them very, very close on their right-hand side. And the reports mentioned that the co-pilot instinctively ducked because it was so close. Now, they were clearly shaken up by this. They asked radar if they had any traffic, and radar didn't see anything.
After a year's investigation, the British Aviation Authority concluded that the craft was unknown. Shepard tried to get more information, but he was stonewalled.
I've written to the captain and he hasn't replied. He's fed up with the whole thing. This comes back to the culture of silence. The line of least resistance is to say nothing about these things.
But experts have logged a high number of sightings.
We had 52 incidents of flying triangles over the city, hovering over main streets, buildings, highways, cars, and this caused quite a lot of consternation to the local public.
And more Silent Vulcans have been spotted outside of England, in the U.S.
In the Hudson Valley area of New York, literally hundreds of these things were reported by some pretty sane, level-headed people.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere. This great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head.
And more were sighted in Europe.
There were several thousand sightings, some of them at low level, of triangular-shaped objects over Belgium. Not just ordinary civilians, but highly qualified observers, such as military pilots.
The Belgian Air Force was very open and disclosed how many missions they'd flown against flying triangles.
They released an F-16 cockpit film that showed the triangle accelerating from 0 to 900 kilometers per hour within seconds.
They dropped from 10,000 feet to 500 feet in a few seconds. They were performing aerobatics that no human pilot could have withstood the G-forces.
Other ominous incidents were reported by U.S. military personnel.
On 2 occasions, United States Navy Tomcat aircraft were seen to disappear in close proximity to one of these gigantic triangular-shaped craft. And I spoke to the witnesses in both instances, and I'm convinced they were telling the truth.
Experts fear that these close encounters pose a major security threat.
Some of these craft are dangerous. I have no doubts about that whatsoever. And some of the beings associated with them are dangerous. I don't think they have our best interests at heart.
Coming up on Unexplained Mysteries, a pilot files the first ever UFO report.
They looked something like a pie plate that was cut in half.
Fishermen claim to see UFOs descending toward their boat.
One of the UFO appeared, from their point of view, to perhaps be having mechanical problems.
The Air Force fears that unknown crafts flew within striking distance of our nation's capital.
Described them as brilliant blue-white lights. The Air Force radar expert thought they were picking up metallic objects.
The government's investigation of a sighting may have actually been a cover-up.
This is the government trying to do its fancy little dance.
In the skies above Kentucky, Air National Guardsmen see an unknown craft.
The UFO was in the air for 4 hours.
A famous pilot goes after the object.
He said, "My 2 wingmen are coming in. We want hot guns, and we want them now."
An alien spacecraft might have crashed near Roswell, New Mexico.
These have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
The Roswell survivors finally speak out about the military cover-up.
I just wish we could get to the bottom of this while I'm still alive.
And we'll give you the final summation in our UNX report. It's all here on Unexplained Mysteries. Unexplained Mysteries target Earth. UFOs. Throughout history, people have claimed to see them. Here's the account of the first official sighting. Mount Rainier, just outside Seattle, Washington. An experienced search and rescue pilot named Kenneth Arnold said he saw 9 flying objects.
I could see them only plainly when they seemed to tip their wing or whatever it was, and the sun flashed on them. They looked something like a pie plate that was cut in half. They seemed to flip and flash in the sun just like a mirror, in such a way that it almost blinded you when you looked at them through your plexiglass windshield. As I kept looking at them, I kept looking for their tails. They didn't have any tails.
Arnold calculated the craft were flying at 1,500 miles per hour, much faster than any man-made planes. And people were fascinated by his statement that they were flying like a saucer.
1947 marks the beginning of the UFO era. This is something that everybody agrees on. What Arnold's sighting did was to give these things a name, flying saucers, and connect them with a larger phenomenon.
Clark feels that Arnold was extremely credible.
Ken Arnold was about as honest a man as they come. He had bedrock conservative Western values. He believed that a man's word was his bond.
But Arnold's report was just the first in a string of sightings by reliable witnesses.
Their extraordinary performance characteristics caused people to believe that some kind of extraordinary breakthrough in aviation technology had been accomplished.
But the government denied developing any such object. Then another major sighting took place. Maury Island, off the coast of Washington. 4 fishermen said they saw 5 donut-shaped flying objects.
One of the UFO appeared, from their point of view, to perhaps be having mechanical problems. It was coming down in this falling leaf fashion. When the UFO got down closer to the water, a second UFO approached it. It touched it as if to jumpstart, perhaps. Then all of the craft took off into the sky and disappeared.
After a brief investigation, the Air Force and local newspapers concluded it was a hoax. Some witnesses did not go public then, but now they are.
Barney Leroy saw the same donut shapes. Barney Leroy saw the UFO in the falling leaf pattern. And Barney Leroy saw the jump start.
Barney Leroy was a minister. Before he passed away, he told his brother what he saw.
He said, Bob, one of these discs looked like it was going to crash right near his boat, right over here, maybe 100 yards from the sighting. And he said that another one suddenly came down over the woods and over the trees and touched it. Didn't crash into it, but touched it just enough to give it life.
These Washington sightings marked the beginning of the modern UFO movement.
I did see it, and I did clock it, and it's just as much a mystery to me as it is to everyone else who's been calling me the last 24 hours wondering what it was.
A few years later, one of the most amazing reports of UFOs took place, and it threatened our nation's capital.
This was the year that so many UFOs were seen by military interceptor pilots and tracked on radar.
The Cold War was in full swing. Most people thought the unidentified objects came from the Soviet Union.
They very quickly learned that this was not anything the Soviet Union had produced. And this led a lot of people immediately to say, well, if it's not from the Soviet Union, it must be from outer space.
The military was overwhelmed with questions from witnesses. What had they seen?
The policy at that time was to answer to the best of our ability any queries on particular UFO sightings, and often we could explain what the people saw, often we could not.
CHOP figures the Air Force could not identify 25% of the sightings. These unknown bluish-white lights were seen over Montana, and these were photographed over Utah. Both sets of craft seemed to fly in formation at speeds unattainable by anything man had built. But the military was non-committal until Air Force radar tracked UFOs flying directly towards Washington, D.C.
We have UFO sightings that take place on 2 consecutive Saturday nights. Objects are seen on radar, they're seen visually.
Military and civilian eyewitnesses saw the objects.
What is interesting is that we have radars in separate locations also seeing the objects. We have airline pilots seeing them as well. Air Force interceptors are scrambled. They see the objects as well. So we have a wide variety of people seeing these bright bluish-white lights.
Coincidentally, the military had invited guests to the control tower.
We let the press in and they were observing the scope along with the radar operators. We had about 4 or 5 radar operators there.
Immediately, the Air Force scrambled jet fighters. But in another strange coincidence, they did not come from the closest base.
Air Defense Squadron that normally guards the Capitol was assigned to Newcastle, Delaware, because they were repairing the runways at Bolling Air Force Base, which seemed unusual for UFOs to visit the Capitol when the jets aren't there.
It took more than an hour for 2 interceptors to reach the UFO coordinates.
Well, we could see the flight coming in. All of our unknowns disappeared completely from the scope. It was kind of scary, so we let them go back to base. It seemed like the very second that the interceptors left the range of our scope, our UFOs came back.
The interceptors were ordered back to the UFOs. And on this pass, the objects did not vanish.
He flew into this cluster of lights, and then he said, I see them, they're all around me. And he described them as brilliant blue-white lights. And we just looked at each other, couldn't figure out what was going on up there.
The objects hovered over the Capitol till dawn. Newspapers said aliens were attacking Washington, and the military could not stop them. The Air Force resorted to damage control.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion.
They were under pressure to explain what is this thing that's flying all over the country that we can't identify and have no control over. The official conclusion the Air Force came to was that temperature inversions had caused these sightings. This, for some reason, satisfied people. It's hard to imagine why, but it did. It threw people off the track, and newsmen, like everybody else, I guess, it was too mind-boggling for them to believe it was real.
But experts say temperature inversions take place only under certain rare atmospheric conditions. The signals that return are weak and don't perform the sophisticated movement of these objects. some servicemen have a hard time believing the official explanation.
The Air Force radar expert who was present that night stated that they were good, solid returns, and he thought they were picking up metallic objects.
Later, on Unexplained Mysteries, a police officer comes upon an unknown object.
It heard this big boom in the bottom, and fire came out of the bottom.
But this sighting was different.
There's physical evidence remaining behind.
The Air National Guard takes on a dangerous craft.
They describe the object as being very large, metallic, round metallic object.
But for one brave pilot, it was to be his last mission.
I don't ever recall seeing a crash like that.
Witnesses say they encountered the alien survivors of a UFO crash.
He said one of them was still alive, and it was walking around.
The government intimidates the witnesses into a fearful silence.
The Federal Communications Commission said, do it and you're dead.
And we'll wrap it up with the UNX report here on Unexplained Mysteries. Unexplained Mysteries, Target Earth. UFO encounters are not limited to sightings in the sky. A policeman was chasing a speeding car. He saw something that would change his life. Socorro, New Mexico.
When we got to this hill, I saw a lot of dust, and I let the speeder go, and I turned to investigate. I could see a white object sitting between those two bushes over there.
As he got closer, Zamora saw something he had never seen before.
It was sort of a big egg shape, bigger than a car. I heard this big boom in the bottom, and fire came out of the bottom.
He took cover behind his car.
I could feel the heat off of it because it's windy like now. And then it gradually pulled up about 20, 30 feet and stayed there for a while, and then just took off.
When the object flew over the horizon, Zamora's radio started working again. Panicked, Zamora called for help. Soon after, a state police car pulled up.
We came down here, and we saw this big rock right down here. It was still on fire. And then we saw the imprints of the legs of the craft, and it was 4 of them. And then we saw this footprints around here.
A few hours later, the FBI started their investigation.
They went down there and measured the footprints and everything, but they didn't say what it was or not.
The media descended on Socorro.
This is one of the few sightings that got national attention immediately. Lonnie Zamora's story is on the national news. It's in all the newspapers. Everybody's talking about it.
Randall thinks the incident is important because of the physical evidence.
Landing gear marks were found. The bush was burned by the UFO engine. There were occupants, creatures from the craft sighted by Lonnie Zamora.
3 days later, the Air Force's top investigator took over.
J. Allen Hynek, the Air Force consultant, came to Socorro. He looked at it, talked to Zamora, talked to Zamora's superiors, talked to people who saw the landing traces, took photographs. So there's physical evidence remaining behind. It's one of the few times they said there could be a flying saucer.
He felt that this was one of those cases where the government was unwilling to permit him to say what he would like to say about it. And that dismayed him a great deal.
According to Timmerman, Hynek felt this was one of the most important cases he'd ever seen. The main reason, Lonnie Zamora.
Lonnie Zamora is very credible. He's a police officer. He has nothing to gain by telling this story. There's no question that Lonnie Zamora saw something unusual on the ground.
They say that they don't know what it was.
Later, the Air Force explained they had been testing an unmanned lunar lander called Surveyor, and that's what Zamora saw.
The Air Force explanation simply doesn't work because they have no documentation to place the lunar lander in that portion of New Mexico at that time. It does not match Zamora's description.
I think if Dr. Hynek were here today and saw this new documentation available, the report that the Air Force says it was a lunar lander, if anything, that landed near Socorro, I think he'd say that this is the government trying to do its fancy little dance.
But the test craft could not fly. it was dropped from a tower? And why would the Air Force test a top-secret vehicle near a populated area?
The Air Force completed their UFO investigation, said they had nothing more to say on it, and yet now they're coming out this year providing us with new explanations for old sightings. I have no idea why they're doing it, but I find it highly significant.
Experts feel there is a reason why the UFO landed where it did. The crucial location.
It is between the Los Alamos National Laboratory, the White Sands Missile Range. The Very Large Array radio telescope is 50 or 60 miles to the west. This makes a perfect place for them to come to observe our steps into space and what our science is doing.
Timmerman says that Hynek figured out the Air Force was covering up the incident. He was being used.
Dr. Hynek saw this, and it was very obvious to him that what Lonnie Zamora was saying in the depths of his honesty was not what the military was saying in their attempt to explain it.
Coming up on Unexplained Mysteries, a flying ace chases an unidentified object.
Saw this fighter plane coming in below the bright light.
But the Air Force apparently covered up the incident.
At that time, it was general procedure that nobody talked about UFOs.
And that was not the first time the Air Force had threatened eyewitnesses.
And if anybody got close, they were told to shoot to kill.
Whatever happened at Roswell, I believe that the government covered it up.
And we'll follow it up with the UNX report. Stay tuned for more Unexplained Mysteries. Unexplained Mysteries, Target Earth. Military reports of UFOs take on added importance due to the threat to national security. But the military often denies they were alien spacecraft.
No one's ever going to convince me I didn't see it, because there were too many of us that did.
War hero Thomas Mantell Jr. chased what he thought was a UFO. The Air Force disagreed, and he paid for his mistake with his life.
They described the object as being very large, metallic, round metallic object.
Now, eyewitnesses are speaking out about what may have really killed Mantell in the skies above Kentucky.
I was a control tower operator at Stanford Field. We got a phone call from Godwin Tower. He said, we have a UFO hovering over our airport. And Mr. Kipps, this is no drill.
The UFO was in the air for 4 hours, and it didn't move, it just stayed there.
Captain Mantell was in charge of a Kentucky National Guard squadron. He was ordered to pursue the unidentified flying object.
One of the pilots in the flight, Al Clements, said to him, Tommy, you don't have any air, you can't do this. Mantell replied back, Al, don't worry about it, it's not a problem. They continue on up. Clements finally caught onto it himself. He described it as a large, glowing object.
He said, my 2 wingmen are coming in. We want hot guns, and we want them now.
Blackwell says that Mantell sent the other planes back to get live ammo.
The day of the Mantell crash, I was 6 years old. And my mother was taking clothes in off the line. She'd been watching a bright light in the sky. We heard a loud plane, and we saw this fighter plane coming in below the bright light. Got pretty close to it, and all of a sudden went straight up at it.
Then, flying at top speed, Mantell's plane slammed into the ground. When Captain Dusler arrived to investigate, he discovered something very peculiar.
There wasn't a drop of blood anyplace. It was odd because there was no blood. Odd because there was no fire. I don't ever recall seeing a crash like that, or as serious as that didn't have a fire. I never saw his body because the coroner had taken it away.
No one at the funeral home saw the body. It was in a black leather bag, and then it was sealed inside a lead coffin. The body was buried 3 days after the accident. Was there even a body in that black leather bag? No one saw the remains.
Recently discovered documents reveal that the Air Force sent Colonel H.M. McCoy and his investigator Al Ludding to the site. Ludding had been studying what he called flying discs.
He was the only man assigned to, as he called it, Saucer Project. He had file case after file case after file case filled with reports.
One of the keys to solving this case comes from finding out more information about the Air Force intelligence team that was sent to investigate this incident.
Alfred Ludding was assigned very early in the game to work on flying discs for the intelligence group. Al Ludding designed a flying disc-shaped craft, which, although he was not allowed to patent it at that time, ultimately got a patent.
Where did Ludding get the idea for a flying saucer? Was it similar to the one Mantell pursued?
At that time, it was general procedure that nobody talked about UFOs.
The Air Force's official statement, Mantell died of anoxia, a lack of oxygen, while chasing the object. But does that cover up the real cause of Thomas Mantell's death?
If we can answer these questions, if we can find out their background, then we can have a little bit more information that could answer as to whether this was an extraterrestrial vehicle.
Coming up on Unexplained Mysteries, the legendary Roswell incident. What happened in the desert?
We saw a crash of one of the flying saucers.
Witnesses say physical evidence was recovered from the crash site.
It was a series of geometrical patterns, very different from anything I'd ever seen before.
The government cover-up that traumatized Roswell's friends and neighbors.
Our families have been greatly affected, and we never knew why.
And we'll give you the final word on UFOs in our Onyx report, here on Unexplained Mysteries. Unexplained Mysteries, Target Earth. Many people believe UFOs have been coming to Earth for years, and the most famous incident of all can be summed up in one word: Roswell. Roswell is the focal point for UFO studies. Witnesses say a UFO crashed there in 1948.
I have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
They also say the U.S. government covered it up with threats and intimidation.
And if anybody got close, they were told to shoot to kill.
Whatever happened at Roswell, I believe that the government covered it up.
The government's brutal tactics left lasting emotional wounds on the residents of the town. But now, the survivors of Roswell are risking their lives to speak out.
Obviously, our families have been greatly affected. Our parents' lives were changed, and we never knew why.
Roswell was the home of the 509 Bomb Group of the Army Air Force. It was the only unit in the world with the atomic bomb. Jesse Marcel was the base intelligence officer.
It was late one night when my dad came in. He woke my mother and myself up out of a sound sleep to show us some debris that he brought in from the desert.
The debris came from a crash of an unknown craft.
And he was very excited. He called this stuff parts of a flying saucer. There was some metal foil-like material, jagged like it had been ripped or torn.
Marcel's son says he noticed some pieces contained symbols that looked like hieroglyphics.
It was a series of geometrical patterns. It was certainly very different from anything I'd ever seen before or since.
Another Roswell resident was 12 when her father told her about a close encounter of the third kind.
My dad came home from work. He was really excited.
Her father and his fellow firefighters were summoned to the site of a second crash.
You're not going to believe what we saw when we got there, but we saw a crash of one of the flying saucers. And he said one of them was still alive, and it was walking around. And he said there were two other bodies, but they were in body bags, so he really couldn't see them. He gave us a description about their size, said they were about the size of a small 10-year-old child.
With the number of witnesses growing, the military rushed to create an alternative story. They forced Captain Marcel to go along with the cover-up.
The material that he had taken to General Ramey was taken from him, and then a substitute, pieces of an old weather balloon were laid out, and the news media were called in, and Major Marcel had to pick up a piece and show it. It was a blatant lie.
The military conspiracy left lifelong scars on the people they'd threatened.
Not being able to tell the truth, I think, hurt our family. I feel like a part of our security has been destroyed.
Some have a theory about why aliens were watching the area.
I believe that the reason there were so many flying saucers was that atomic bomb went off. So I think they were observing what was going on. I think they knew what was going on.
When Roswell's radio station reported the incident, the newsmen heard from the government.
The Federal Communications Commission said, the next word you pop out of this, we'll monitor you. Do it and you're dead.
Frankie Rowe found some of the crash debris at the fire station.
I reached over and I got it. And I picked it up and played with it.
Then the military confronted Frankie with a threat that has plagued her for the rest of her life.
A man that I believe was an officer came into the house and he said, I understand that you think you saw something. And I said, well, I saw a piece of material. And he said, no, you didn't. And the more I said, yes, I did, the more emphatic he got that, no, I didn't. You can never talk about this the rest of your life. And he said, there are things we can do. We can take you out here in the desert, and no one will ever find your bodies. You'll all be dead. I don't want to live this again, because we don't know for sure they won't do something. They promised they would come back so long as I lived. How do I know they won't?
Was the Roswell incident a close encounter of the third kind? Extraterrestrial contact? The government says no, but Frankie Rowe and her fellow survivors feel they've paid a terrible price for the government's cover-up.
I think the world should be told all of the details from the beginning, but I don't think this is the only incident, and I think we are entitled to know about all of them.
Next, Unexplained Mysteries gives you the final word on UFOs with the UNX report. Did unknown intruders shut down our nuclear missiles? What were the giant three-sided crafts spotted over England? And UFOs head straight for the capital. Hear the harrowing tale of an American hero who dies while chasing an unidentified object, and how the government cracked down on innocent eyewitnesses after a possible crash in the desert. Get all the facts and the UNX report coming up next on Unexplained Mysteries. And now, the UNX report. According to witnesses, alien spacecraft have been visiting our planet for years.
He said that he and other guards had seen UFOs flying over the area.
2 disturbing incidents took place at top-secret missile bases.
This was not an airplane. If the whatever it was came inside the fence, he had my authority to shoot.
Nuclear missiles were taken over by a mysterious force.
About 5 minutes later, he calls back and missiles started shutting down.
All over England, there were sightings of huge flying craft.
It banked over sharp to the left, and then I could see it was a huge triangle.
Reports came in from credible witnesses like airline pilots.
A very brightly lit craft flew past them. The co-pilot instinctively ducked because it was so close.
Experts fear that the unidentified objects pose a significant threat.
And some of the beings associated with them are dangerous.
An unidentified craft spotted above a military airfield set off alarms and a chase.
They described the object as being very large, metallic, round metallic object.
When the pilot intercepted it, he was killed in a bizarre crash.
There wasn't a drop of blood anyplace. There was no fire.
An Air Force team was sent to investigate the crash. Or were they sent to put the lid on it?
No one at the funeral home saw the body. It was in a black leather bag, and then it was sealed inside a lead coffin.
Even our nation's capital came under attack. Air Force personnel were stunned when hundreds of UFOs appeared to descend on the city.
He flew into this cluster of lights, and then he said, "I see them, they're all around me."
And survivors from the first documented UFO crash site speak out for the very first time.
These have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
We saw a crash of one of the flying saucers. One of them was still alive, and it was walking around.
Now they say the military threatened them with physical harm.
And if anybody got close, they were told to shoot to kill.
Whatever happened at Roswell, I believe that the government covered it up.
We don't know for sure. They won't do something.
For updates on some of these cases, visit our website and click on the UFO links. Eyewitnesses are certain these extraterrestrial craft are targeting Earth. Are they invaders from another world? Or are they, as the government claims, weather balloons, lunar landers, or military secrets? Important questions, but for now, the answers must remain an unexplained mystery.
How do you get a killer to confess?
The idea of you having them caught in the act is a very powerful tool.
The people that sit in that chair, they've tasted their very last breath of freedom.
It's the interrogator's job to find out. The Interrogators, all new, tomorrow at 10, only on Bio.